Hello, Incredible Moms. This is Crystal Evaristo with the Incredible Moms podcast, where we discuss getting pregnant, being pregnant, having babies, being a mom, and so much more. We hope you enjoy the show. Hey everyone, I'm here with Faith today. Faith is here to discuss her incredible journey to get pregnant. I want to preface this episode to let you know that Faith will be discussing her incredible journey to get pregnant. This includes going through IVF, suffering loss, and some very scary bumps in the road along the way. We hope this story can help you in any way if you're going through the struggles of IVF and trying to get pregnant and stay pregnant. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Faith, and I am going to give you our journey. My husband and I have been married for 14 years, and 6 of those years we spent trying to have children, never on birth control. We knew from the moment we married that we wanted to have children. And the journey of getting to parenthood was long, but very rewarding. So for 6 years we tried, and during those 6 years we endured probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of doctor's appointments and denials. We had some doctors that wouldn't even treat us because they told us it was impossible to have children. We went from local doctors to specialists, of course, OBGYNs. It took a toll. I want to say that most of those years, I probably was not even fit for motherhood because I experienced so much depression because trying to get to motherhood. We took every pill that we could take. We took every shot that we could take. And eventually we sat down with a doctor who was originally from California, who had just become a part of the UNC medical team here in North Carolina. And he blatantly told us across the table that everything we had endured was senseless because there was no medical way we would ever have children without IVF being involved. And for you, those of you that don't know, IVF simply means that you take the specimen of the sperm out of the male and you combine it with the egg of the female and you create an embryo. It sits in a petri dish for 5 to 7 days as it kind of grows and then it's put back in you. But you have to be on all of these medications because the way that our human body is made, we reject foreign objects. So your body has to be hormonally at a certain level so that your body does not reject that embryo and is put back into you. I remember the day they took my eggs out. I had 29 eggs, which they told me was a massive amount. I remember the lady in the curtain next to me, she only had 13 eggs. And then they left her and they came over and told me I had 29 eggs. And I could hear her crying next to me through the curtain. And that was kind of a sobering moment. I was like wanting to be happy for myself having 29 eggs. But I felt the heart of this lady next to me who only had 13 eggs. 29 eggs sounds like a lot until you realize that during IVF, more than likely your body will reject those embryos. And, 13 was a minimum amount compared to the 29. And so I don't know whatever became of their story, but out of our 29 eggs, we did eventually get 23 embryos out of those 29 eggs. And out of those 23 embryos, we have 3 children of our own. We have 1 child in heaven, and we have 2 children somewhere in the world after we donated those embryos to another family. So our first IVF transfer, our embryo transfer, I can't remember the month, but I do remember it being cold. So I want to say it was around January to February. I had left my job. I was working in corporate America and I couldn't pass a darn stress test for anything in the world. And if you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on IVF, you might want to be able to pass a stress test before you get deeply involved into it. And so, with my doctor's suggestion, I left work. My plan was to leave work for a period of time, but my boss didn't agree with that. I worked for a male boss at the time who would not allow me to take the leave from work and outright told me that I would be fired if I left. Uh, and so, I kind of told him do what he had to do. At that point, we had already spent all this money on hormone therapy, and we had the eggs taken out, semen taken out, and we knew that we wanted to move forward. And more than likely, if I were to have a successful pregnancy, my desire was to be home with my kids. So I left corporate America and had my procedure. The very first one that I had, we put in 3 eggs. We had just bought our house. We had bought a house that was a foreclosure. It was a historical house, and we had set out to remodel that house. And I fell down the stairs. They had just finished polishing the hardwoods. We had the hardwoods resurfaced, and they had, shined them up very, very well. And I remember having socks on. I don't know what I was going down to the basement for, but the moment I missed that first step, I knew I was falling down the rest of the steps, and I knew it was not going to end well for the embryos that I had just had transferred in. And indeed, it did not end well. So that was an early miscarriage. Then thereafter, we tried again. I did not get pregnant the second time. We put in 3 eggs. And by the third time, we put in 2 eggs. We didn't get pregnant again. And I remember the phone call with my mom after that. And I remember telling my mom that, which was probably the worst moment. I remember telling my mom that maybe my husband and I weren't meant to be together. Because why would God put us together and not allow us to have a family? My husband wanted a child so bad. And I felt like a broken woman that couldn't give him the desire of his heart, which was a child. Those months, those years of struggling with infertility literally broke not only who I was as a person, who I was as a woman. It put so much tension in our marriage. It prevented me from being able to celebrate others. I remember the year when my cousin, for Mother's Day, surprised her mom and our grandmother at a family dinner, announcing she was pregnant. And I had to get up and leave the room. I was so happy for her. But on the inside, I just felt this, I don't know, maybe an overwhelming, it wasn't jealousy at all. I was really, really elated for them. I just felt this, why me? Why am I going through this?
Grief, something.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know what it was. It was like it wasn't bitterness. I genuinely was happy for her, but I just couldn't stay in the room. Just could not be there in that moment. So on our 4th IVF transfer, I remember going in. I had prayed with my mom that morning, and I remember going in, and by this time, it was kind of a note. I was like just doing it because it was scheduled to do. I had no hopes that I would even be pregnant. I wasn't optimistic, but I was just doing it because we had already signed up for it. We had already scheduled everything. And yeah, at this point, honestly, I didn't think we would get pregnant, but we went in, we put 2 embryos in, and 7 days later, we had an ultrasound and we were pregnant. And I remember going back at like the 2 or 3 week appointment and the doctor telling me that, there was a likelihood that the embryos had split and that we would have twins. And I was kind of excited about it. I was like, well, good, we just spent all this money. At least we're having two.
Right.
Um, and then I remember a few weeks into my pregnancy, being at Walmart, walking around, and I was on the grocery aisle, and I was just walking, and I was like, did I just pee on myself? Like, what is going on? And I knew I was either bleeding or losing some kind of fluid, and it was coming out rapidly. And so I was like, let me just get to the bathroom as soon as possible. And so I went to the bathroom and I was bleeding. I didn't know what was going on, but there was a lady in there with me, and I asked her if she would go get a store manager for me, and she did. I was here in Clayton, so I don't even know who that woman is, but she went and got a store manager for me. And I remember handing the store manager like $40 out of my purse, and just like, can you please go get me, some pads and some pants or something, because I bled straight through my clothes at the time, and I was so embarrassed. And I left and I went home, and I didn't go to the doctor because I already knew in my brain what was happening. And I think I didn't want to face reality, you know?
Yeah.
Um, I don't even think I said anything to my husband at the time because I didn't want to hurt him and disappoint him. By this time, we had already had a miscarriage. And so I don't think I said anything to him at the time. I think I just told him that I had some discomfort and I was bleeding, and that we would just see at the next doctor's appointment. And the next doctor's appointment was the latter part of the next week. In my head, I was like, this isn't going to work out or whatever. But I just kind of just swallowed it, put it at the back of my mind. And that that Sunday was Mother's Day. And I went with my husband to his family's dinner. I remember sitting on the floor of his uncle's house by the fireplace with my sister in law. And she said something hilarious. And I busted out laughing. And, and I said to her, I said, "You made me pee on myself." And she was laughing and chuckling away. I remember putting my dinner to the side. And as I was walking, and his uncle had like white carpet. I remember it being so white, and there were probably, this is pre-COVID, African American family. When we have cookouts and stuff, there's like 40 people around. There's all these people in the house, and everybody's celebrating Mother's Day, and I didn't want to cause a commotion or a scene. And so, like, as I'm walking, I feel fluid going down my pants. I had brand new jeans on, brand new, just bought them. And so as I'm walking, and I wear flip flops everywhere I go, I kind of pull the bottom of my pant leg just a little bit to look down at my ankle, and I saw blood. And I knew it wasn't good because of how dark and rich it was. It was very dark, and it was a lot of blood to soak through not only my panties, but, jeans, and to be all the way down at the foot. And so I said to myself, I got to get off of Uncle Tommy's carpet. I got to get off of his carpet. And I slipped out of the living room, through his laundry room, and out the back door. And I walked all the way around the house. And as I'm walking around the house, every time I take a step, there's a gush, 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 gush. And by the time I made it to the front porch, my vision was already blurry. And I just wanted to make it to my husband, because for me, my husband was my safe place. If I could just get in his arms, it didn't even matter, what was going on. I remember, I think his uncle answered the front door, and he was like, "What are you doing outside?" And I was like, I asked him where my husband was, and we kind of made it to the bathroom. And by this time, I'm not even hearing right because people are talking to me, and I just see their mouths moving, but I don't really hear what they're saying. I remember sitting on the toilet, and it's like the toilet, it was like just the blood was never endless. It was like it filled up, and I remember flushing it. And then I remember one of his aunts coming in, and She's rubbing me on my back. His mom had took my pants and put them in the sink. There's so much, the sink was just red. It was just full. She's trying to wash my pants, and his grandmother came in and she's reading scriptures to me, and I'm just like, all these people that's going on. Has anybody called the ambulance? That's, in my brain, I'm like, they put me in the shower and finally the blood stops. And my husband says, do you want to go to the doctor? Or do you, let's go to the hospital. I remember him saying, let's go to the hospital. And I told him no, because I didn't want to hear what I already knew was going on with these two big bouts within days of each other of blood loss. And so the next day, I called the doctor that morning, told her what happened. So she told me to come on in. And at the time, I was at Cam McKenzie, which is one of the best OBGYNs in our area. And I remember coming in, and the nurse practitioner came in and, I told her about what happened. They took some of my blood, they ran some tests. And I was so weak that I needed an IV
in the office.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was so weak. I just read, it was like a blur. It was like a blur. And I remember the word optimistic. The lady used it 10,000 times. She kept saying, I don't want you to get your hopes up. Let's remain optimistic, but you lost a lot of blood. Remain optimistic, but you've had all these, miscarriages before, let's remain optimistic, but it sounds like it won't be a heartbeat there. And then I remember her putting the ultrasound over. There was one little itty heartbeat. And it was like in the 90s, and it needed to be in the 130s or 120s. They wanted it a lot higher. But when I saw that heartbeat, I knew that somehow, some way, not by anything that I've done, I consider myself a good human, but I've done wrong like anybody else. But somehow, some way, there was a merit of grace that was afforded to me. Because technically, the amount of blood that I lost, I think it was like 7 liters. I think that's what you told me. I lost a lot of blood. I remember staying in the hospital that day.
Did you need a blood transfusion?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I ended up having to go to Wake Med. And it's just optimistic. I can't remember. She annoyed me with that word.
It's so like setting you up for the worst, but being pleasant about it.
Yeah. Like, your baby's probably dead, but, right. I don't want to be mean about it. But, when I saw the heartbeat, I was like, thank you. It's like, this is my chance. We had lost one of the fetuses, but we had one. And throughout that pregnancy, at that point, I was considered high risk, and Wake Med had actually taken over all of my appointments. So I was high risk with them. And I remember going in at like 12 weeks, 12 or 13 weeks. We found out it was a girl, and I knew her name would be Grace. Oh. I knew her name would be Grace. My husband was like buying everything. He was buying everything. And a part of me, I just wouldn't buy anything. A part of me was like, it's too good to be true. If you've ever experienced a miscarriage before, or if you've ever experienced a stillbirth, or if you've ever experienced a medical abortion, or if you have ever lost a child, the worst thing is coming home to an empty nursery. That's the worst part. It's coming home to all those clothes and the car seats and the booties and the teddy bears. I wouldn't buy anything. My husband was buying his life away. And I was like, I'm not buying anything. I have a baby in my arms. By that time, we had already lost our first daughter, Mackenzie, which I don't really want to talk about. Yeah. But I remember coming out of Wake Med, and they released all the mothers at the same time. And everybody else had a baby, and I had a teddy bear. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Wish I had tissues in here.
Rather you have, a miscarriage or a stillbirth, you get released at the same time in the morning as all the mothers that have given birth, and they wheel you down in your wheelchair, and you see all these other mothers, and they give you a teddy bear, and it's just like, I threw it in the garbage. I didn't want it, Yeah. That's a period of my life I just kind of want to forget, So when it came to being pregnant with Grace, I kind of held my breath the entire pregnancy.
Understandably.
It wasn't like, I guess most mothers either count the weeks or the months. I literally counted the kicks. I remember so many times pressing on my belly and jumping up and down, like, kid, are you still alive in there? And that's a fear that you shouldn't have to live with during your pregnancies.
Want to enjoy it.
You want to enjoy it. I mean, I'm so godly sick all the time, but you want to enjoy it. At some point in my pregnancy, probably around 6 or 7 months, I went back into the hospital. And I had to be in the labor and delivery ward because they didn't know if I was going to go early or not, which was like the worst because the beds in there break away. And so they're not comfortable at all.
Yep.
And mind you, as a mom, a first time mom who was never giving birth, oh my dear Lord, the screams through the night of other women giving birth, and I heard it all night long, every night.
Right.
Oh my God, it tormented me. I was like, somebody please give her some medicine, like, oh, just hearing those other women give birth scared me to death. Eventually I was released. They gave me, what is it called? A suture? It's like
a cerclage?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was able to go back home, which I didn't go home for long. She was due on December 23rd, December 16th. She was born on 17th, December 16th. I remember my husband and I were playing the Wii. We were playing tennis on the Wii. And, like when I sat down, my back was just like in this intense pain. And I had called my mom, which I had called my mom the weekend before. You can see by now, me and my mom are pretty close. I had called my mom the weekend before. And I was like, I think I'm going into labor. I'm hurting so bad. And she came up and I didn't go in labor, obviously. And so my mom was kind of one of those, don't you waste my time again. Next time you better know you're in labor,
Like the girl who cried wolf.
I remember getting in the tub. No. Before the whole tub situation, my mom did come up and I wanted a pizza. And my mom was like, yeah, you should get something spicy. That'll get you going. And so I had a pizza with jalapenos and sriracha sauce. It was good. I mean, my mouth was pretty numb, but I mean, that's what I wanted. Pregnancy, you crave every kind of crazy stuff. And I remember getting in the tub. No, that morning when I had the pizza, I called in and I spoke to the doctor, and he told me, he said, I tell you what, you sound like you're getting close, but call me back when you cannot talk anymore. And I was like, cannot talk? Like, what are you, what kind of symptom is that when I can't talk anymore? And he said, when you can't talk, that's when you'll know that you're ready. Trust and believe me. And he said, just take some long hot baths, and just try to relax. You're going to need your energy later on. And that was on the 16th. Well, the night of the 16th, I got in the tub. I'm not a tub person because I think you're just sitting in your own filth. Yeah. But I did get in, and I remember being in there, and I remember the water, like seeing that I was at least discharging or something in the water. And then all of a sudden, this rush of pain. And I remember like tapping the sides of the tub. And I remember I couldn't even call out to my husband because I was in so much intense pain. And I think that's what the doctor meant when he said you can't talk. And I didn't want to put clothes on or anything. I was like, give me a robe. I am going naked. Um, you know, and I felt every bump going to the hospital. So we got there. I labored, not active labor. I didn't push or anything, but I labored from that night until about 3 a.m. Around 3 a.m., it was time to push.
How dilated were you when you got there?
I was 4 already when I got there. Not much, but I mean, it hurt like hell, you know. So when I got there, we went through all the paperwork and do you want an epidural and blah, 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 blah. And so I got an epidural. It didn't really do much because I guess they put like a tap. They I don't know, so that they had a drip or something. Mm-hmm. So they had one part that was inserted in my back. And then they had a button. I remember I could push it so often, so many minutes. Well, the thing fell out from my back. Oh, like it was like the piece that was in my back was taped onto my back, but then it had a connection maybe 2 or 3 inches away. That the connection part, that port part,
and it just leaked all over you.
It was just leaking behind me. God. And I remember like pushing. My husband was behind me. My mom was on the right of me. Pre-COVID, you could have multiple people in the delivery room. And I remember saying to my mom, "Your nails, you're digging into my legs." And Dr. Rush says, "You shouldn't feel your legs." And I said, "Well, I feel them." And that's when we found out that the epidural was out of my back. Oh, no. And at that point, she was like, "Whatever, you're already crowning, keep pushing." And so I'm pushing.
And you could feel all that. I'm sure.
I could feel it. Yeah, my God, I could feel it. And I mean, I feel like I pushed for forever. I remember changing multiple positions. I got up off of my back. I think I went to all 4s. They gave me a grab bar to grab onto. I was doing all this stuff. And then all these like freaking alarms start going off. I couldn't breathe. I have asthma. And I remember Dr. Rush putting the oxygen thing over my face. And she said, "Faith, you have done well. You have done well. This is a big baby. And I do not think you're going to be able to push her." Mind you, I could see her head. They gave me a mirror. I could see her head. I could see her forehead, and I could see the top of her eyebrows. And they wanted to use the, I think, forceps or something. Oh. They offered the vacuum and something else to grab her. And my husband was adamant. "Nope, we're not doing it. We're not doing it." And so she told me to take a big breath and kind of sit up. And when I did, I felt like and it went from, I couldn't see her eyebrows anymore. I could just see the top of her hair. She had so much hair. And Dr. Rush went off and she went out, did something in the hallway. She came back in and she said, "Faith, we need to prep you for the OR. You're tired. I'm tired. The team is tired. I think you need to have a C-section. You're having difficulties breathing. Your oxygen's dropping. The baby's oxygen is dropping. The safest option is to go in for a C-section." And by this time, I am exhausted and I don't care. Just get this sucker out of me. So we go to the OR. I had a safe C-section and I had a 9-pound, 10-ounce baby girl. And she came out looking like a 3-month-old kid. She was huge. And mind you, all those clothes my husband was buying, she couldn't wear anything. She was huge. She was a huge baby when she came out. And she is the absolute joy of my life now. She's almost 8. She'll be 8 coming up. And she's a gymnast and she loves basketball. And she is the best big sister, which leads us into my second pregnancy. 2.5 years after we had our sweet Grace, Hurricane Sandy came through the Northeast and it caused a wreck. I mean, it tore up all the way, I think it was like from North Carolina coast all the way up to like Jersey. It tore up the entire northeast coast. And our embryos were in Virginia. They were stored there. They were blast frozen there. And the facility that had our embryos had called us and contacted us and notified us that they were hit by the storm, but our embryos were safe. They were frozen, and that they had 30 days of generator backup. And they had told us that we had two options to either A, immediately start another IVF journey, or to B, ship our embryos to Tennessee, and that they were not, they could not promise the viability of those embryos once they shipped. If you know anything about embryos or IVF, like, once you do it, there's a classification. You get like an A, a B, and a C. Well, you've already heard the story of how many times we had to try just to get our sweet grace. And so we already wasted so many of our A embryos.
Right.
And, if anybody's ever done IVF, you never just put in one embryo because of the amount of time, the amount of money, the amount of doctor's appointments, and all the participation you need involved. My husband had to take off work to take me back and forth to these appointments. You literally go to the doctor every single day. And you get blood work drawn every single day, to the point where my veins had collapsed on my arms. They were going from my arms to my hands to my thigh. They were going all over to try to get blood because my veins had just collapsed. And my body was just tired. I mean, I was drinking water bottles by the gallons trying to just produce blood.
Right.
Because your blood count, you probably know more than I. What is it? What is the level?
Your hematocrit or hemoglobin.
Yeah, hemoglobin, yeah. So your levels have to be at the exact hormonal rate that the doctors want. And if they go in too early, if they go in too late, doing the IVF process is senseless because your body will reject the embryo. Your white blood cells will attack it and they will kill it. They'll fight it off. So you kind of have to trick your body into pregnancy.
Right.
So we wasted I don't want to say wasted, but we tried. We tried our best. We did what we could do to try. I tried my best to be a host, for these babies. But, God had his own plans. And by the time Sandy happened, we only had B and C's left. And so we had elected to go ahead and start the hormone process. I want to say at the time, we weren't like broke at all, but we were like, do we really want to spend $12,000? But we're like, okay, we'll do it. And we had like just enough money to do it, like extra money without really going in our savings, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't like finance this. I guess some people finance it, but we were just paying for it as we went along. We saved up for it, And I remember doing it and taking all of the hormones. They come in the mail. I remember doing it. And I remember going to the doctor's appointment and hearing the doctor tell me that my levels were not where they should be. And that unfortunately, I would have to go through another round of hormones. I had all these estrogen patches all over my stomach, and my butt was so sore from shots all the time. Shots in my my uterus lower, in my stomach,
your belly,
in my belly, and then I had to put some in my hips, and then I had to wear all these patches. But it for some reason it just didn't work. I don't know if it was because I breastfed for a very long time, so I had to immediately stop breastfeeding just to go into this hormone therapy. But the first round of the hormone therapy didn't work. And so when the doctor told me that I had to buy another package of hormones, I was like, wait, we only had enough money for what we just bought, Well, I remember calling my mom and I was like, yo, you kind of got $5,000 sitting around, And my mom was more than willing to help. And I mean, she was like going to go to the bank that day and do it. And just miraculously, I walked to the mailbox, and a job that I had did years prior, I work in kind of like construction, but restoration. And I did a job years prior, and the lady never paid me. And I kind of had just written it off. Well, I guess I don't know if it was guilt or whatever, but her husband had died. And the money that she had from her husband's life insurance policy, she paid me what she owed me. And the check was literally
Oh my
in the
God.
mail when I needed it the most. And it was only it was like a true miracle because it was only like $20 more. Like I had nothing left over after I bought the next round of hormone medicine. And I was like, yes, yes, yes. Like, this is my sign, this is my sign that this is what we're supposed to be doing. Because obviously, to abruptly go into hormone therapy, you're not really intending to have another baby really so soon. But the storm comes through and it causes us, it kind of throws us in this situation. And we do it. And then to go and get my levels tested and to be told that my levels are not there, I was kind of down. I was like, well,
Okay.
it's just not our time, And, so I ordered the next package, and I remember going into the doctor's office to see what had thawed out. They do all this testing, and the doctor said, we thawed out 4, but unfortunately, your bees did not survive the thawing process, and you only have 2 C's left. Well, we all know in categories and A, B, and C that C's are the worst. And so I only had 2 C's. And I said to myself, this is not going to work. Like they're putting the worst embryos that I have. They're putting it into my body when I don't even know if I'm really ready, but I kind of got thrown into this thing. And if they wouldn't even survive the unthawing process, why in the world would I ship them to Tennessee,
Right. Thank God you didn't.
Yeah. And so we put in these 2 C eggs. These 2C embryos, embryos. Put in the 2C embryos and we go home and they told me to come back at 5 days. Some ladies go at 3 days, some go at 5, some go at 7. I don't know how they evaluate when you should come back to get your ultrasound to actually see if you're pregnant, but the embryos have to attach. If not, I don't know what they do. They just fall out when you have your cycle at the end of the month. I don't know. But I remember going back. But the night before, I had the strangest dream. I was baking apple pies, and I used to be a baker, but I was baking apple pies, and the dream was just like continuous of me baking these apple pies. And in one pie, I was putting all the Granny Smith apples. And then in the other pie, I was putting all the Honeycrisp apples. But when I normally make them, I combine the Granny Smith and the Honeycrisp because I want the sweet and the sour to create a tanginess within the pie. But in this dream, I was putting all the green ones in one pie and I was putting all the red ones in the other pie. And that morning, I remember waking up to my husband. I said, we're going to have twins, and one's going to be a boy, and one's going to be a girl. And he's like, what? I think one's going to be a boy and one's going to be a girl. And he's looking at me like crazy. And I'm like, I just don't see why I wasn't mixing those apples in that pie. It was just, I just had this is my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I remember going back to Cam McKenzie. And I remember the doctor getting the probe ready. And within seconds, I saw it. I saw it within seconds. I mean, there was one that was very obvious. And then there was another one kind of hidden. Mm-hmm. But I saw as he passed over the first one that he saw, I had already saw the one in the corner. And I remember just like putting my hands over my head. And I wanted to scream for joy. I was elated because, it was like I didn't have to go through IVF anymore. It was like, I don't know if both of these babies are going to survive. I don't know, what's going to happen, but I know I'm not going to try anymore. I'm going to be the best host to these babies that I can. And, the doctor, he went back and he said, man, you got a 2 for 1, And I was like, yeah, because these guys have taken enough of our money, And my husband was he was elated. He was so happy. And I think it was that appointment where we had our first conversation they had approached us about the rest of our embryos. We had 6 embryos left. And I told them that I needed time, but we were willing to consider. In the African American community, if you are African American and you have struggled with infertility, I'm sure you can attest to this, but there is not a lot of availability for African American women who cannot have children of their own or do not produce eggs of their own to have a donor egg. We made so many friends during our journey with fertility, and a lot of them have to leave the country to find eggs. So, if you're African American and you're between the ages of 20 and 35, I implore of you to look into donating your eggs. They give you like $1,500, by the way.
I think it's more than that.
Yeah, it's more?
Oh, yeah. It's like $8,000.
Yeah.
$5,000 to $8,000.
All you have to do is give yourself a whole bunch of injections for like a month, and then you lay on a table. They give you anesthesia, and they take your eggs out, and you have a kid somewhere in the world. But you're helping another family that's struggling with it. So we didn't donate our eggs at that appointment because I wanted to make sure that I safely, delivered first. And so a few weeks into the pregnancy, again, I was classified as high risk because of the trouble with my first pregnancy and the prior miscarriages.
And just the fact that you're carrying twins.
Yeah, and the fact that I'm carrying twins. And so we were at Wake Med again. The good thing about being high risk is you get a lot of ultrasounds. And I remember going in and we found out baby A was a girl. And we were like, yay, 2 girls, and baby B wouldn't move. And we're like, all right, baby B, why aren't you moving? And the next week, baby B would not move again. And
stubborn.
The next week, baby B would not move again. So like for 3 or 4 weeks, we couldn't find out what baby B was. And the next time I had went in, one of the like seasoned RNs that were there, she was like, have you had a pretty healthy appetite, this pregnancy? And I said, well, yeah, during my pregnancies, I was vegetarian. I'm pescatarian now, and I've added fish to my diet, but I was strictly vegetarian. During my pregnancies, I practiced yoga. I was like the healthiest person in the world. And I remember her telling her that, I felt like I was the healthiest I'd ever been. And this lady goes in the corner and hands me a Coca-Cola and a brownie. And she says, eat these and I'll see you, in 5 minutes. And so I drank the Coca-Cola and I ate the brownie, and baby B was bouncing off the walls within minutes. Both of them were. And we found out that baby B was a little boy. And so my husband was just, ecstatic. He wanted a son so bad. So for me, it was like, good, we're done. We got a boy and girl, perfect match. And, the pregnancy didn't become difficult or have any difficulties until we realized that baby B was not growing. We're like, baby A is huge and she's thriving and she's always bouncing, and baby B just never moved. Eventually they tested us and told us to expect baby B to come out with a form of Down syndrome. And we were like, who cares? We will love him however he comes. As the pregnancy went on, normally they like to deliver multiples early because they don't want you to get so big.
Right.
But baby B was so small. And, the doctors kept telling me the longer I could hold on to them, the better it would be, because they told me that I didn't want to go through the pain of separating, one baby in the NICU and one baby, keeping one baby, going home with one baby, and leaving one in the NICU. So I remember the doctor used to tell me every day in is a week out. If you can keep him in an extra day, you can keep him out of the NICU for a week. And so I kind of held on to that. So I went to 39 weeks and 4 days with twins. In between that, I had numerous amniocentesis because
Too
baby
much fluid.
B's sac was completely fluid filled. He was just the littlest thing. Like I said, he never moved, but he had so much fluid. So they, and those amniocentesis hurt like hell. Like the needle is so long. They don't give you any medication orally. They just kind of numb you topically, on top of your belly, and it hurts. Well, actually, what hurts even more is they have to monitor the sac to make sure there's no
Right.
that you're not leaking fluid or that they didn't tear the sac. So after they stick this long needle in you, and after they draw out all this amniotic fluid, they go over your belly like what seems like 10,000 times with this ultrasound wand. And you're like, oh my God, please stop. And I remember telling the guy's name was Frederick. He was the ultrasound technician. His badge said Frederick. And I said, Frederick, I am so sorry, but if you wand over my belly one more time, I'm going to kill you. He's like, I know, I'm so sorry. And you don't get your medicine till like after, because they want the baby to be as alert as possible so they know what's going on. They don't want the medicine to kind of like make the baby drowsy or whatever. And so after all the amniocentesis, I went in and I had a scheduled cesarean. They wanted me to last until that Monday. And that Thursday, I went to the doctor, and I remember crying. I was miserable. I was huge. Um, I was huge. My God. I was like 200 pounds, and I had only been like 125 prior.
Wow.
I was huge, and I was like all baby. My feet were swollen, my hands were swollen. I couldn't do anything for myself. I couldn't even pick up my oldest anymore.
We could barely walk.
Yeah, I was just
Fluid.
miserable, and the pressure, and all twin moms can attest to this. When you lay down with twins, the pressure that is on your lungs is, oh my God, you can't breathe. And so I remember sleeping. My husband had bought a recliner. The doctor had gave us a suggestion. I remember sleeping in the recliner. It was the only way I could sleep upright. And so they wanted me to wait until that Monday, what I would have been absolutely 40 weeks. And I remember being at the doctor's appointment. I was crying. And, my doctor, Dr. Bernstein at the time, he was so adamant. He was like, nope. We need more time. We need baby B just to grow a little bit more.
And was he growing like kind of
He
slowly?
was slow. They were giving me steroid injections.
Okay.
Which is why I was so big too. He was kind of growing, but he just wasn't growing at the rate, we knew something was wrong, And, but again, I was willing to love my son. And I'm not saying this, don't get me wrong, for any parents that hear this. You want your baby to be healthy. But if my son would have come out with any condition, I would have loved him as is. But my dream was to see my son playing football with my husband, and playing softball and wrestling and kicking and screaming and doing everything else. But I had told God that I will take him however he is, and I was completely content with it. Well, I remember going to the doctor's appointment, I was crying, and the doctor would not give way. Well, the nurse who was there, she was like, well, you do know if you tell him that you're having, these bad thoughts, and that you're not responsible for your own actions, that he'll have to deliver you. And I was like, what? She was like, just tell me you feel like you're going crazy and you're having negative thoughts about suicide. And I was like,
what?
And so I was like, let me see what it'll do. And so when he comes back in, I'm like, I can't take this anymore. I feel like I'm going crazy. I just feel so depressed and da 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 da. Just feel like I'm going through. And he's like, are you saying to me that you need to be in the hospital because you're not responsible for your own actions, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, hey, whatever gets me in the hospital. I got in next day. Next day, they scheduled the cesarean. I went in, signed all this paperwork. And in the middle of signing the paperwork, I kind of remember, I distinctly remember afterwards, but I remember the nurse saying, at any time when we're in the OR, if you feel a pain on your right side, to notify her right away. And this was a lady that would be with me the whole time. She was like my nurse, and she was like right there beside me the whole time. And so I'm laying there and they got one arm going this way, one arm going this way. My husband's on the left side of me and they're cutting me open. And I didn't know at the time until afterwards that when you have a cesarean, you are numb only because there is a disconnect between what is going on physically and mentally. But that does not mean your body and your organs do not suffer the trauma of you being cut open. You just can't feel it mentally in your brain, but your heart speeds up, your organs go into overdrive because your body is trying to figure out what the heck is going on. You know, like your organs don't know what's going on when you're having any kind of surgery or a gunshot wound or anything. Yeah, it's a shock to them, right? And so I'm sitting there and I feel tingling in my fingers on my right side. And within, I wouldn't even say a minute, probably 30 seconds, that tingling became an intense pain in my wrist, which shot up through my elbow. And by the time it made it to my shoulder, it felt like someone had stabbed me in my shoulder. And I remember saying kind of like, oh, you know, my hand, you know, and they unstrapped my hand and I kind of, you know, wiggled it a little bit. And I said, oh my God, you know, what's going on? My arm, my arm, my arm. And then I remember, you know, my arm, what's going on? And the lady like slapped something on my head. My husband said it was black. I don't know what it was, but he said it was like a scale, like the colors changed. Maybe you know what it is. It was some kind of, it was some kind of black thing he said they put on my head. I remember her slapping something on my head. I remember them putting the oxygen on. And I remember them putting something in the line that I had, some kind of medicine in the line. And
on that same arm that was hurting?
Yeah. I was having a stroke. I was having a stroke on the operating table, but I was in the best care at Wake Med. I was in the best care. My body had went into complete shock over what was going on. Now, it probably has something to do with the fact that I have extreme anxiety over medical procedures. I cannot even get a tooth pulled without having the doctor prescribe me something the night before because I'll chicken out. I won't even go to the appointments. I have bad anxiety with like white coat syndrome or something. You know, like I hate doctors.
Was your blood pressure high? My
blood pressure spiked. That's what led to it. My blood pressure went up. So after I kind of like came back to, they pulled both babies out. I heard everybody crying. I kept seeing like these little, I thought they were fruit flies, but they were like spots and stuff that I was seeing, like dots and stuff. They were talking to my husband. The lady kept rubbing me on my head and she's telling me, you're fine. You just got to breathe. You just got to breathe. You just got to breathe. And so I got back to the recovery room and that's when the lady came in, told me about my blood pressure spiking and that I would have to be on some medicine for the next few days as they try to regulate my blood pressure, which was good because that took me out of that normal 2-day hold where they release you. And I would have went home with baby A and baby B would have had to stay in the NICU. And they left me in the hospital for longer because they had to monitor my blood pressure.
They give you magnesium? Was it magnesium?
I don't know. It was a pink pill.
It was a pill. Oh,
yeah, they gave me a pill. Well, the first day or two, they gave me the injections because I already had the IV lines and those ports in. But after I came home, I was on these pink pills for probably a month afterwards. But I remember when the doctor came in from White Oak Pediatrics and she gave me, I had baby A with me. Baby B was gone getting testing and all this stuff done. And she came in, she had these folders and she said, well, baby A is seems to be fine. She's 7 pounds. Baby B was only 4 pounds, and he's so much smaller. And she said, but oddly, its blood test shows no signs of Down syndrome.
Oh wow!
And I'm like, I just burst into tears. I don't know if it was like relief. Mind you, I'll say I would have loved him however he came, but I just had a sense of relief, and we still didn't know why baby B was so small. Ended up taking both babies home and loving on them, caring on them. doing all the motherly stuff. At 4 months into having the twins, I remember waking up specifically at 3:07 a.m. because baby B, who was our son, whose name is Dylan, did not wake up for his feeding at 2:30. And I was so engorged that the pain from being engorged woke me up. And I remember kind of like peeking in, and I was like, well, look, if he's going to sleep, I'll just pump. And then my husband can feed him whenever he cries, I'll get some extra sleep. I could never get those kids on the same feeding schedule, by the way. They just kind of ate whenever they wanted to. So I never slept. I literally would breastfeed one, and then an hour later, the next one would be crying. I would breastfeed that one. God. And in between diaper changes, they never pooped, peed, or did anything at the same time. So kudos to all the parents of multiples out here. I understand your struggle. So yeah, 3:07. I remember waking up, looking at the clock. It was 3:07. And I remember peeking into the room and making my way to the kitchen and pumping. And I made a bottle and I left it on the counter because I was like, he'll probably wake up within the hour. And I remember getting back into bed and like something was like it's, I don't know, my mommy intuition or something. Something was like, go check on your baby, And so as I go in, I hear this little like, sound like a rat or a mouse or like an animal or something. And so as I get close to the crib, they're both sleeping in the same crib. That noise, I was like, what is it? And I couldn't really see them because the nightlight was the only thing on. And so I just turn on the bedroom light in the nursery. And as I get closer, I hear the and I could see that he was struggling to breathe. And so I lift up his shirt, and I've still got the video in my phone. I lift up his shirt, and it's like his stomach and his chest is like completely caving in. I can see his rib cages.
While he's breathing.
Yeah, I'm like, what is going on? I don't know what to do. This is my little 4-month-old baby. I don't know what to do.
Want to hear more of Faith's incredible story? Stay tuned for part 2 coming out soon. Thank you so much for listening to this incredible mom story today. I really hope you enjoyed it and that it may have helped you in some way. Make sure you rate and leave a comment so I can be sure to bring you the content that you really want. Please follow the Incredible Moms podcast on Instagram, where you'll also be able to find many updates and episodes. I can't tell you how much I appreciate any support. Stay tuned for another Incredible Mom next week.